Have you ever heard of an economy being haunted? No, I'm not talking about actual ghosts. I'm talking about something way more unsettling, really. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on what's being called Japan's ghost economy. Let's get right into it. So, here's the really weird part. It's a total paradox. You look around and all the pieces are there, right? The buildings, the roads, the banks, everything looks normal. But underneath the surface, there's this feeling of emptiness. Like the whole thing is just grinding to a stop. So, what on earth is going on here? Okay, so to really get our heads around this, let's first break down what people even mean when they say ghost economy.
All right, and let's be super clear. This has nothing to do with anything supernatural. A ghost economy is basically when the skeleton of the economy is still standing, but the lifeblood, the people, the energy, the buzz, is just seeping away. And it's all being driven by these massive, deep-seated changes in the population.
And you can literally see the signs of this all over the place. We're talking about a huge spike in abandoned homes, family shops that have been around for like generations, boarded up. It creates this nasty downward spiral, right? Less activity means even less business, which leads to even less activity. And pretty soon you've got whole towns, especially out in the countryside, just feeling hollowed out.
So, we've seen the symptoms. Now let's talk about the cause. What's the real culprit behind this whole economic haunting?
It seems like a simple question, right? But the answer? Well, the answer has been brewing for decades. And it's not just an economic issue. It's something that is fundamentally changing the very fabric of Japanese society. And here it is. It's really a 1-2 punch. First, you've got a population that's aging incredibly fast. At the same time, the birth rate just keeps on falling. It's like this demographic pincer move, and it's creating this huge and still growing imbalance. And this chart just lays it all out so perfectly. Take a look. Back in 1995, you had a really large working population supporting a smaller group of retirees. Now, flash forward to 2025, see that shift? The workforce is shrinking while the retired population is ballooning. That squeeze, that demographic squeeze, that is the engine driving this whole ghost economy. So, faced with this kind of slow-motion crisis, what do? Well, the Japanese government decided to try something pretty radical. They launched a massive experiment with negative interest rates. I know, it sounds completely backward, doesn't it? Negative interest rates mean you actually have to pay the bank to hold your money. The whole idea was to make saving cash so painful that everyone, banks, companies, regular people, would be forced to do something else with it. Spend it, invest it, anything to get that money flowing again. And you can see the intended chain reaction here, right? Step 1, charge people to save money. Step 2, that should, in theory, push them to take out loans and spend. Step 3, all that new spending and investment heats up the economy. The goal was simple: break that cycle of stagnation that had been going on for so long. A really powerful idea, on paper. But as we all know, things that look great on a whiteboard don't always work out so perfectly in the real world. So let's look at what actually happened. How did this big, radical experiment really play out? So the big question is, did it work? Did this economic exorcism, if you will, actually get rid of the ghosts? Well, like a lot of things in economics, the answer is complicated. Really complicated. Yeah, it turned out to be a classic double-edged sword. On one hand, you're trying to stimulate the economy, but on the other, you're absolutely hammering savers and retirees, the very people who rely on interest from their savings. At the same time, it crushed the profit margins for banks, and because money was so cheap to borrow, it introduced the risk of creating these huge, dangerous debt bubbles. And really, this gets to the heart of the whole issue. This is the key takeaway. You just can't fight a massive demographic wave with monetary policy alone. It's like trying to stop a tide with a bucket. An older population, just by its nature, spends less and takes fewer risks. So you can make money as cheap as you want, but if people don't fundamentally want to borrow and spend, the policy is just never going to have the full effect you're hoping for. So what's the bottom line here? Why should we, sitting here, care about all this? Well, because what's happening in Japan isn't just a Japanese story. It's basically a glimpse into the future for a lot of other countries. But don't get the wrong idea. Japan isn't just sitting back and letting this happen. They're adapting in some really fascinating ways.
They're going all in on automation and robotics to deal with the worker shortage. They're trying out all sorts of incentives to encourage people to have more kids. And they're even launching these huge programs to try and revitalize those emptying regions. It's pretty impressive. And that's exactly why this is such a big deal. The challenges Japan is wrestling with right now, an aging population, a shrinking workforce, finding out the hard way what economic policy can and can't do, those exact same challenges are coming for so many other nations. Japan is basically a live experiment, a laboratory for the future, and we should all be paying very close attention.
So that leaves us with a pretty heavy question to think about, doesn't it? As our own countries start to get older, what are the lessons we need to be learning from Japan's experience right now? And maybe the more important question is, are we even remotely prepared for when our own economic ghosts start to show up?